This is Dementia Empowered, the podcast helping family caregivers navigate dementia care, overcome legal and financial challenges, and make confident decisions to support their loved ones. I'm your host, Patrick Kolle. Let's get started. You're overwhelmed, you're frustrated, you're burning the candle at both ends. You've heard the concept of self-care before, but what does that actually mean when you are engaged in dementia care? Keep listening, and you'll hear that it all starts with recognizing what you are feeling, that you will make a choice about where to direct your attention, and ultimately, there may not be a perfect plan. Only in hindsight does that happen. My guest today is Jen Gruber. Her website is jengruber.com. That's JENNGRUBER.com. Jen has been where you are. She's cared for a parent with dementia while maintaining her own relationships, taking care of her children, maintaining her employment. She understands what it's like to have the overwhelm sneak up on you. She emphasizes that healthy social connections and healthy relationships are the root of well-being and happiness, and that's what she coaches people on. Jen, thank you for being here on Dementia Empowered to talk to people about a framework of self-care.
Thanks so much for having me, Patrick. It's great to be here.
I think you and I spoke off the air, so to speak, and we agreed that people go into dementia care without much of a plan for how this overwhelm shows up. The best comparison that I can make is if a woman finds out that she's expecting a child, then you plan out what room of the house will be the nursery and what's the plan for daycare and what help will I need? What are the finances going to look like? But it's a major change in the family to be caring for someone with dementia care, but people just don't have the same expectation, whether it's the time frame involved, who knows? Whether it's the energy that will go into it, what is that going to do to your own thinking when you start feeling frazzled? People just don't seem to go into it with the same kind of planning. Has that been your experience as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think the majority of people are caught off guard, at least to some degree, when they find themselves needing to be more involved in the care of a parent or a loved one. I was just talking with a client who's known that her mom, who is a widow, would probably need to stop driving eventually, but because of a medical incident, they've reached that point a lot more quickly than they expected. So now all of a sudden she's finding herself, needing to find resources for her mom, take time off to take her to doctor's appointments, and just really trying to keep other family members in the loop, all while also maintaining her own employment. Like you said, she has a busy job and kids with active schedules who she's shuttling around. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. People do find themselves in these situations often very unexpectedly. I think, like you said, when you have a baby, you've got time to prepare for it. Also, for the most part, a choice to have children is a choice that people make consciously. They're having a baby because they choose to have a child. Whereas with a parent's care, a lot of times that's not a role that anyone has really asked for or has welcomed in. They just find themselves in this situation. And so often people feel really ill-equipped to handle it.
Sure. That's a great point is this is more duty than anything. And that's not how people see that news that you're expecting a child. It's not just sheer duty. It's something you are signing up for. And the unexpected, I suppose that happens with young children. They unexpectedly get sick and people know what that's like, setting aside everything for the child. But I don't know, there's something about the unexpected twists and turns of dementia care. Plus, do you have the legal planning in place, a power of attorney? Are you ready to manage finances? You're not doing that for a kid because they have no money and you're the
Right.
parent. You just make responsibility or you make the decisions. That's part of your parental responsibilities. So all of these things come together. But in the end, I love that you focus on the relationship coming first. That tasks will fall by the wayside. I don't care how good you are at dementia care. Some tasks will not get completed. The timeline for completing them will not work out with your expectation of it. Things won't happen in the way that you think they're going to. But if you maintain the relationship, not only with the person who has dementia, with those family members you just mentioned, with yourself, then really that's the bottom line is how is that going? And I love that you place your emphasis on that.
Yeah, and that's the thing that often people don't think about. They find themselves in these stressful situations and end up like putting out one fire after another, and they're under a lot of stress oftentimes. And that stress really takes a toll on all of their relationships. This relationship with their parent, the dynamic of that relationship has changed as their parent needs more help. And then the stress changes the dynamic of relationships with spouses, partners, kids. It can take a toll in all those areas. And a lot of times people really miss out on opportunities to find connection with the people in their lives during this stage of life because they're so caught up in the overwhelm and the stress that's often involved.
Yes. So there's a bleed over effect. And it
Sure.
all starts with maybe tending to you, the caregiver, your own mindset here. And as a very general framework, understanding everybody's circumstances are going to vary a little bit. You talk about focus on what you're feeling, like really recognize it. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, yeah. When we think about self-care, and self-care really is anything that you're doing to support your physical, mental, or emotional health. So self-care can encompass a wide range of things. And there's a lot of people who feel like, "Oh my gosh, I know I'm stressed out. I know I'm working too hard. I know I've got to get all these things done. The only time I have to do it, the only way I'm going to get everything done is by either staying up late and doing it or getting up early to do it." So then you've got someone who's already dealing with a stressful situation who's also sleep deprived. And then they're recognizing, like, "Ugh, I know I need to do something to take care of myself, but that's just impossible. Like, when or how can I possibly do that?" And I think that self-care, sometimes the connotations that we have are things like getting a massage or taking a spa day or going to the beach for a couple days. And those are all great self-care tools or strategies. But self-care doesn't have to be that time consuming or complicated. Really, it can be as simple as giving ourselves some grace, showing ourselves some kindness. And the simplest way of doing that, the most important way, is to really just recognize what we're feeling, to just acknowledge that, whether it's resentment, frustration, impatience, sadness, guilt. When we start by recognizing those feelings and we tell ourselves, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm talking to my sister and she hasn't thanked me for all of the time I'm spending with my mom. She's totally taking me for granted. And this is really making me mad." Or I made time in my schedule to take my dad to the doctor this morning and he's not ready. And he's acting like I have all the time in the world. And I have a presentation at work later and I was planning to get ready for it this afternoon. And of course, I'm feeling impatient. Of course, me being impatient doesn't mean that I'm a bad daughter or that I don't love my dad. Me being impatient is a perfectly understandable feeling to have in this moment.
It
So
is.
when,
And I think
yeah,
what you just cycled through is exactly what people do. They'll start with, this is what's happening. I feel insert adjective, and then they jump to conclusions. But you're saying, hold on a second, just stop and validate what you're feeling because what you are feeling is valid. And you ran through it could be resentment that I'm having to do this and my sibling isn't lifting a finger to help. It
yep,
could be frustration. I keep running into dementia time, which is not the timeline I'd ideally be working under. It
right,
could be, I don't know, it could be guilt. What if it's the long distance caregiver? I wish I were there more. I feel guilty for not chipping in as much or could be right across town, but they have too much and another sibling is doing it. So they feel guilty. But whatever you're feeling, that's what you're feeling. And I don't know how often when you're working with clients, Jen, do you say, let's really hone in on what are you feeling first? Just stop the jumping to conclusions. And they just say, I don't know, I just feel a general sense of unease. I just feel agitated. I just feel exhausted. But there's always more to it than that. And whatever you're feeling is valid. But I think really people need to hone in on what it is that they are feeling. There are feeling words. I've seen the sheet with the smiley, all the faces on them,
Yep,
smiley
yep.
face, but the slightly confused face. I mean, really putting detailed words to it so you can really hone in on what is it that I'm feeling before you do anything else with that feeling.
Yeah, exactly, and I have so many people tell me like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for listening. You're making me feel like I'm not crazy. I thought I was crazy for feeling this way, and you're making me feel like this is normal." And I think part of that is because we all have so many people in our lives who are very well-meaning and who care about us and want to help us, and in doing that, they tell us, "Okay, don't feel guilty. You shouldn't feel guilty. You're doing everything you can do. You I know your mom wishes you could come visit her more, but you don't feel guilty about that." Or you shouldn't feel resentful, or they tell us things because they want us to feel better. But if it's okay to feel guilty, if I don't know, if my daughter has a band concert tonight and my mom falls and needs to go to the emergency room and I need to miss my daughter's band concert to go to the hospital with my mom, and I'm in the hospital with her and I'm thinking about how much I don't want to be there, and then I'm feeling like a bad daughter because I feel like I should wanna be with my mom, and I also feel like a bad mom because my my daughter was counting on having me there. It makes sense that I feel guilty about those
Yeah,
things, and
you might be
having
some kind
someone
of
tell me not to feel guilty isn't really gonna help.
you might be some kind of sociopath if you don't feel guilty about missing your daughter's event, or if you just blow off mom being in the hospital. That's a healthy response, but stop and recognize that is what you are feeling first. And I agree. There are the people who I think they're trying to be supportive and say, "You're doing great. Don't feel that." Well, I
Yes,
am feeling it. And so recognizing that is the first thing. And you have said before that even just trying to suppress what is a natural and expected feeling is going to take energy itself.
exactly. So, what happens is if I'm in the hospital with my mom and I'm thinking like, "Ugh, I know I shouldn't feel guilty. I know I should feel grateful. I have so many friends who have lost their parents and I still have my mom, and I know I'm lucky and I should be focusing on the fact that at least she's still here." All of those feelings that we're trying to force ourselves to feel, that takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to squelch what we're feeling or to try to make ourselves feel a different way. And when all of our energy is directed towards that, when we're already under stress, so we have less energy to begin with, and then the energy that we do have is going towards trying to manipulate the way we're feeling, then it doesn't leave a lot of energy left for anything else.
And so once people start to free themselves of this sort of hamster wheel of, I feel something general, I shouldn't be feeling this, then it compounds on itself. Once they get out of that cycle, they know what the emotion is. Maybe they have some more clarity on why they are feeling that emotion.
Right,
Then they're going to make a choice, whether
right,
they are doing it consciously or maybe unconsciously or just not paying attention to it. We make choices. So you
right.
feel something, you decide what to do with the feeling, and then whatever comes out of your mouth or whatever you do, that's your choice. So, how do you talk to people about the choice they make about directing their focus after they know what they're feeling?
So in this example, I'm in the hospital with my mom, and I might be telling someone about it later and saying, "Oh, it just sucked because I didn't have a choice. Like I had to go to the hospital and I couldn't go to my daughter's concert." So if someone were telling me that, I would step back and help them step back and look at like, okay, well, is how true is that? Why is it that you felt like you had to go to the hospital? And then the answer might be, "Of course I had to go because it's my mom and she's 90 and I couldn't let her go to the hospital alone. She would have been scared and confused, and I wanted to be there to comfort her, and I wanted to talk to the doctor to figure out what was going on and what the care plan was." Then, okay, well, so you weren't at the hospital because you had to be. You were at the hospital because you really love your mom and you care about her. Being there for her is important to you. Your commitment to family is important to you. Being involved in her care is important to you. And so helping people to recognize where that choice lies is really that's a key part of it. And then once you see that, yeah, it still stinks that I had to miss the concert and that these things occurred at the same time. But okay, what do I want to do with that? I still feel guilty. I can find some peace and comfort and solace in knowing that I was here for my mom when she needed me. And that's a good thing. I like showing up for my mom in that way, and I like the fact that she knows she can count on me. I like that my daughter is seeing an example of this is what you do for a family member who needs someone. When you look at all of the implications of what's gone on, that kind of helps. And then you can choose from there. Okay, well, do I want to sit at the hospital and be miserable? Do I want to sit here and cry because I am sad that I'm missing my daughter's concert? Do I want to use this opportunity to have a conversation with my mom about to share some memories from childhood? Do I want to show her some pictures? How do I want to use this time? Once you get out of that loop of feeling guilty and trying not to feel guilty and just a breath and look at the whole situation, then you can see what your options are and make a choice about how you want to direct your energy and your time.
I love that you let off that analysis by asking, is that true? So we kind of check the accuracy or the logic of what we're feeling, because the flip side of your example is also true. You said you didn't have to be there for your mom at the hospital. You're there because you're a good daughter. But the flip side is, how do you know? Is it true that your own child whose event you're missing is going to be devastated by that? Or will they understand? And I really think that's where having a coach like you, someone outside of your circumstances who is not seeing red, it's not all right up in the coach's face. So the coach can reflect back and check the accuracy of how the person is thinking it through and restore some balance. But then you went on to say, okay, so even if it's true, what are you going to do in this moment? And sometimes that sitting and just crying for a moment, that is the right answer. Now, I wouldn't recommend that as a long-term strategy, but it has its
Exactly.
place. It has its place. And then you can start to be a bit more self-forgiving and constructive about what you're going to do with what you're feeling and what you've checked the accuracy of. So I like how you took it through that way. So people have looked at exactly what are they feeling. They've checked the logic. They choose what they're going to do with that realization of what they're feeling and whether it's accurate to feel that way. I think the third framework for all of this, of course, is some perspective that only in hindsight is this going to be like, everything when you look back, those shoulds you mentioned, those come up, especially when it's, I should have done this. Looking back on it, that was the wrong way to go about it. That's the norm with dementia care. There will be mistakes. There's no perfect plan. But how do you guide people through that step of the framework?
My gosh, I always tell people it would be so easy to make a plan if we all had a crystal ball and we knew exactly how things were going to play out, how long everyone was going to live, what they were going to struggle with, but we don't. So we can make the best choices that we can based on the information we have at hand. I think that many of us, when we're caring for someone with dementia in particular, we have a hard time. We struggle so much with trying to figure out what the best plan is going to be. And then once we're on that course, if things aren't going as we'd anticipated or as we'd hoped, it's really easy to second guess ourselves and to think, oh, maybe I made the wrong choice. Maybe I should have done things differently. And that kind of thinking really isn't serving us. The reality is that with dementia, with things that are gonna come up that are unexpected. The person with dementia is gonna feel frustrated and unhappy at times. There's no way to ensure someone's safety 100% of the time.
And it won't
We
seem fair and it won't seem like this is deserved by the person living with dementia or by the caregiver. So much of it just seems like going back to the beginning where you said we feel out of control. That's where a
Right.
lot of the worst emotions are going to come from.
Yeah, exactly. And in reality, nothing like our loved one or parent isn't uncomfortable or unhappy because we've made the wrong decisions or because we didn't do enough research or because we didn't prepare well enough. It's happening because dementia is horrible and heartbreaking and difficult. And what's helpful is if we can, on the front end, think about what our goals are, what our priorities are, why we're making the decisions that we're making. So then, when, if and when things don't go as we'd hope, we have that to look back. Okay, well, I made the best decisions that I could at the time. My priority was keeping my mom in her house, or my priority was keeping her in a familiar environment, or making sure that she had people that she knows around her, or making sure that she had access to going outside and being in nature, or knowing that her financial security was maintained was my priority. Whatever, or that or her medical care was the highest priority to me. Whatever kind of guideposts we're using to make those decisions, being really clear on that up front so that then when we do get to that point where we're questioning ourselves or it might be second guessing ourselves, where we can pause and be like, you know what? In hindsight, if I had known the way this was going to play out, maybe I would have made a different decision. But at the time, knowing that my priority was her finances and making sure that she had maintained financial stability with all the information that I had and keeping that priority in mind, I made the best decisions that I could.
Yeah,
Does that
and
answer your question?
I think when you're managing a whole other adult's life, you just rattled off a number of things that are going to come up, everything from financial stability to medical decisions, which I think I've done other episodes of the show. People get caught totally unprepared for that, and that comes with a certain emotional weight. How long mom stays in her home as opposed to goes to a memory care community or skilled nursing facility. These are this is a lot. And I think that probably, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the people looking in hindsight and saying I should have done something differently, it's because they were trying to do all of those things as an equal priority when that's for one person, one caregiver, that's going to be likely impossible. What you just were identifying are priorities. It's okay, what's the most important thing? And I think maintaining the relationship is the most important thing. Mom's going to see the world in a different way with dementia. Her
Yeah.
view of reality is distorted. So she's not trying to anger you by asking the same question over and over
Right.
again. In her mind, it's the first time she's ever asked the question. Maintain the relationship. You don't want to look back on that and say, I shouldn't have snapped at mom. She was doing the best she could with a changing brain. So prioritize the relationship. Then what comes next? Being ready for financial decisions or medical decisions? And how often do people look back and say, I don't know how I tried to do all of that myself?
Yeah.
Maybe the better way, if no perfect plan, but a better way would have been to identify these priorities and start putting people in various roles on the team that or reach out to resources sooner. That's getting past the recognizing the emotion, exactly what it is and why are you feeling it? Is it true? How are you feeling it in your body? What are you going to direct your attention on to take care of yourself and then to take constructive action? And then ultimately dealing with the idea that you're not going to do it all yourself, at least not anywhere near perfectly, allowing yourself that reality that there's grace in that. I will make mistakes, maybe assembling the team and parsing out what are the priorities and going about them in a more sensible way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge part of it too, Patrick, is recognizing that you not just shouldn't, but like can't do this alone. It's impossible. And it's crazy that people think that they should be able. I mean, I that was me when my dad had Alzheimer's. I felt okay. I don't really know anything about Medicare, but I'm like a pretty smart person. And I've got the whole internet at my disposal. I can go online and figure out his insurance, figure out what's going on. Oh my gosh, like when I think about it now, I think, what made me think that I could decipher all of that? And why would I want to when there are professionals out there whose job it is to guide people through this process? I think coming back to guilt there, that comes into play. Oh, these are my parents. I should be able to give them the support they need. I should be able to do this myself. And once you let go of that and recognize how much strength there is in bringing in a team who can support you in different ways, that's going to free up time for you to have that, to be able to focus on that relationship with your parent that
So,
you're
yeah,
that's
that's
really
it.
wanting.
That's the only way really to maintain the relationship with your family member with dementia, with your spouse, with your kids, is if you think this through and realize that of all the resources out there for dementia care, a super daughter cape is not one of them. And so trying to be a superhero is probably not the best way to go about it. But helping people break this down is what you do. And it's obviously not just dementia care, but you've been down this road personally. You've worked with people who are the dynamics of caregiving and what people do in their own minds. This is what you coach people through. So if people go to jengruber.com, that's JENNGRUBER.com, it's a great website and you emphasize relationship first from the beginning. And there's a button you can press to set up a discovery call. But tell me what people will encounter if they reach out that way.
Yeah, yeah. When someone reaches out to set up a discovery call, that's a complimentary 45-minute call that I offer to anyone who is interested in potentially working with me. It's a great opportunity for me to learn more about that person's situation and for them to learn more about my services and for the two of us to find out whether we might be a good fit for each other as far as working together. And then from there, and that's absolutely no obligation with that one conversation. Usually, I've never had anyone tell me that they haven't felt better at the end of that conversation,
I bet.
regardless of whether it leads
What a
to.
waste of time. Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah. And then beyond that, if someone wants to continue working with me, pretty simple. I offer single session, totally customizable packages. So I can meet with people for as many or as few sessions as they'd like. For someone who has a really specific decision that they're trying to make, whether to keep a parent at home or move them to memory care, how to have a conversation with the siblings, how to bring everybody on board with a plan, kind of thing. That might be just two or three sessions. My sessions are all 45 minutes. So two or three 45-minute sessions for someone who has like a broader issue, who's looking broader scale at the implications of their parents' care on their life and how it's going to impact different relationships and just what they want their life to look like moving forward. That might be more like 9 sessions over a 3 or 4 month period. So really depends on the person and the situation, but that would be something that we could talk about on that discovery call.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Jen, thank you for being there as a resource for people going through this because I know people search high and low, the people who know they have the problem and need some help, and they just don't know where to find help. Or the people who might have an inkling that there's a problem, but they don't know how deep it goes. I'm grateful that you're out there to guide people through this. And I'm especially grateful that you came on the show to share some of the ways you go about solving these problems that people get into.
Yeah, it's been great to be here with you, Patrick. Great talking with you. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
That sounds great. I cover a lot of topics on Dementia Empowered: legal concepts, navigating the healthcare system, financial challenges. These concepts are all connected in dementia care. Coming soon to my website, KeystoneElderLaw.com, is a self-guided course to help you put it all together in one place. Anytime and anywhere, I can guide you through a number of sessions to learn the care skills of dementia. If your family would benefit from coaching, send me an email at info@KeystoneElderLaw.com.